Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this wonderful Thursday in December. Um, we are having December's Lunch and Learn this month will be on field extractions. We appreciate you coming today and joining us. Today's session will be delivered to you by Robert Codwell, who's a one of the Splunk CX members of our ever growing customer experience team. He delivers expertise on demand to our customers, as well as supports our Atlas product to help you get the most out of Splunk. If you have any questions along the way, please post them in the chat and we'll get to them. And now I'll hand it over to Robert.
Hi, guys. Thanks all for coming here. As Steve said, I'm part of the CX team. Again, if you guys have any questions throughout the entire presentation here, put them in chat and Steve will be happy to answer, or he'll pass them off to me and I'll be happy to answer them. I plan on this lasting about half an hour, half of it being a PowerPoint presentation. The other half, we'll get into the demo part of it. And just as a quick preface, I hope you all have a great holiday in case I forget to say it at the end or anything. And I've also been known to get a little excited and talk fast. So if I misspeak or I say anything that you don't quite catch, don't be afraid to ask me to repeat it. So with that out of the way, let's begin. So today we're going to be covering field extractions, which is a highly important part of Splunk. It deals with nearly every sphere of it. So whether you're dealing with data models, dashboards, just general ad hoc searching, anything you do within Splunk will most likely touch field extractions. So today we're going to cover that. And on today's agenda, we're going to go over what they are specifically, how we extract fields, specifically about regex and field extractions. So if you're a fan of regular expressions, you'll be seeing a lot of that today. We're going to talk about field extractions at indexing time when the data gets ingested into Splunk, and then we'll do a live demonstration of how it looks on the Splunk web server at search time. So with that being said, let's begin. Starting off, field extractions simply extract fields out of data values. So let's say you have a string of data come in. What this does is that it finds a value within that string, and it basically picks it out as a classification among everything else. And so, say if you have a bunch of web logs come in and you want to look for the date and time, it will look for the date and time across all of those and put it in its own little field where you can pick them out, sort them, separate them, whatever you'd like. And we call these fields are what we call key value pairs, the key being the field name and the value being what populates that key. So let's say you have a key like a field host or source and a value. Let's say for a host, it's computer 1. You would do this at index time or at search time, like I said, and both have their pros and cons, which we'll touch on why you would want to do one versus the other and when. In the meantime, just keep in mind that these are highly modular and critical to getting the most out of Splunk. I'm going to put up a screenshot here that shows what fields look like in Splunk, specifically at the search page. And so clicking on one will show you the top results among of values in that field, along with the number of times they've shown up and what percentage out of all the values shown up that value occurs. And when I refer to index time, I mean that's when the indexer receives new data and ingests it and logs it as new events. Search time refers to the period when a search starts to when it stops. So we extract fields at indexing time through the configuration of files. Typically, you will see this in props.conf and transforms.conf. These two very much go hand in hand, and odds are you'll have to touch both of them if you ever want to do any of this at indexing time. And most of the time, this is done from the command line interface. See here. System administration privileges are sort of a requirement for this, as you will need to get in and manually edit these files. And you will also want to do this, if you are going to do this for my admins out there, on the local, not the default, because there is two out there. There's the default one, which is meant for specifically for Splunk to keep as like a baseline. And whenever they update Splunk, 9.4 just came out, so it'll overwrite the default for that. And you do not want to touch those files because those are overwritten every time you update Splunk, and all those changes would be gone. So we use local instead. And once it's put into the indexer, it can't really be deleted, and it's tough to get stuff out of Splunk. You would either have to clean the index or just wait for it to phase out through the buckets. Secondly, we have the field extractor tool at the Splunk web level. This is what you'd be using to make long-term changes if you're a non-admin user. It creates fields out of samples of existing fields. You'll be able to instantaneously see the results, which is pretty nice if you want to ensure accuracy. These must be tied to a source type or source and requires an understanding of regex and delimiters in order to use, at least one or the other. And finally, you can actually do it from or with SPL in the search line, and you can use commands like rex, extract, kv, and spath, but you also have to learn how to use SPL and regex. And obviously, one thing you've probably noticed is that all of these really involve regex one way or another. This is because regular expressions are excellent at handling complex data patterns with great precision. We can increase flexibility without compromising accuracy and optimize performance at the same time, so they're absolutely wonderful to have. When we break up events, it creates faster search times by giving us the ability to be more precise. If I only want to look for usernames or of a specific quality, let's say username Robert Caldwell, I don't want to look for another username like Steve Hunger. I only want to look for Robert Caldwell. And so all the events that would be meant for, or say Steve Hunger, would be thrown off to the side and they wouldn't be presented. And doing stuff like that adds up if you really narrow down your search. We have an excellent webinar over regex that we actually did last month. The speaker of that one, Carlos, goes into great detail about how you can use regex. This example isn't nearly as in-depth, but I wanted something to show you what it looks like. So when we really get into it, it doesn't look that intimidating. But his would go into much more detail if you're much more interested in how regex can help you in general. Yeah, so here I have an example about how regex would work with a specific string. As you can see, specific characters are being seen by different operations within our regex string. However, keep in mind that there's so much more you can do with regular expressions outside of this. I just wanted you guys to be able to see this, so when we get to something like this, it's not so intimidating. Because at a first glance, this kind of looks like a lot of stuff going on all at once, but when you break it down, it's really not a whole lot. Let's say you have system logs that consistently look like this, with a date, time, a date, and a time, a user and the username, an action that they're doing, and the status of that action. In your conf files, you will be able to extract those fields by each one. So in this case, we can see that John Doe logged in successfully to the system on December 18th of this year at 2:30 p.m. We can break that up into separate fields like datetime, user, action, and status. And we can actually name those datetime, user, action, and status within Splunk, so that's properly reflected like it would be in the log. This means that if we were able to look up for something in Splunk like all the users that successfully logged in the last 24 hours, we could. And if we look at the date time and notice that somebody is successfully logging on after 20 failed attempts on a Sunday morning at 3 a.m., odds are it's not them, and security action should be taken against that. That should be looked into. And that's a great example about how fields and Splunk in general can be used for security purposes. And I'm going to show you a bit more complex one, which is more like an Apache web server log. But it's really more of the same. This is really what you're looking at is just lots of different places that we can break up data. If you look here, we have the IP address, we have the date and the time, we have a get API users, we have a URL here, we have the system it was run on. And so you can, if you start looking at it like that, you can really start to see where we can break down these individual fields and what we can pull out of it. And so once you do that and you go into Splunk, it becomes very handy to be able to search up all that stuff. So with that out of the way, that was more of our index time demo, which I don't really call a demo, but it's hard for me to show you guys stuff on the CLI. So instead, I just wanted to get that out of the way before we actually moved on to the proper demo. And this one being that we're actually going to go into Splunk and we're going to try a couple. So as you see here, I have some sample data coming in under index of demo, and it's just 78 events. Ignoring this one, that's just a bunch of bloat. That's effectively all date, time, status, user, what happened, and IP address. And this is a really good example of how we're going to be able to extract. So starting off, where do you find fields in Splunk? Well, there's actually 3 different ways you can get to it. The first one is by going to settings. You go to fields, and it'll pull up all these different field types. Right now, we're mostly worried about field extractions, though. And in here, you can see a couple that are automatically populated by Splunk. And these look a bit intimidating, even to me, because like even looking at this, I'm not quite sure what it's trying to fish out. But odds are it's not even going to get anything that's not in the common information model or SIM compliant. But this is also where whenever we make custom ones, it will show up. And you can sort by the specific app or the specific owner, like admin, and see that I have none currently done. So from here, the first way we can get to it is by new field extraction or opening field extractor. New field extraction brings you to almost like a shorthand way of doing it. This is sort of like the way you would take if you knew exactly what you wanted with the app, the name, the source type or source or host you wanted to apply it to, what type, whether it is an inline or a transforming one, and what the regex would be. Opening the field extractor brings you to the actual tool that Splunk has that helps you extract fields. And this will save you a lot of headache with having to do some of the regex yourself, having to figure out how to do it yourself. So we go here and we can select a source type. So let's say I want to do output produced by Snort Network. I can select that source type, and I don't have any right now. But within that source type, everything within the last 90 days would show up, and I would be able to select events out of that. I'll go back now, and I will. Oops. And I'll find index demo, and I'll show you the second way that we get into it, which is under the fields column. And I'd like to note that with fields, whenever you're running in verbose or smart mode, interesting fields are fields that show up in at least 20% of the events. So if they match at least 20%, they will show up here. However, you're able to modify and move select interesting fields into selected fields, just like that little checkbox there. We come back here, you'll see that we have the date hour now in there. But if we go down here to the little plus sign that says extract new fields, we will see that it actually pulls up all the events from our search that's presented. So if we present within the last 24 hours per se, and we search by a specific source type, it will still pull up all the events by that specific source type in the last 24 hours. So that's something to keep in mind when you get into this. You can also manually change that once you get in here by changing the relative time. And also, it'll also sample events. So for every 1,000 events, one will show up. Except and you can also sort by diverse events or rare events. So if there's events that you're trying to extract that you really don't want to look through all these different events for, that rarely show up, you're able to do that by sorting by diverse events or rare events. And you also even have a handy dandy little filter here that'll also help you get rid of any fluff that might get in the way. So with that out of the way, I'll show you the last way, and then we'll actually do some field extractions here. I promise we're getting to it. Last one is by doing this little drop-down icon on the events itself, it will pull up a lot of the common fields that it has. And from here, you can click Event Actions. And this middle one here has Extract Fields. And this is personally my favorite way because this takes this specific field and kind of jumps ahead. So it's a pre-picked field for you that you get to use in order to do either regular expression or delimiters. So I'll actually start with delimiters. I'm personally not a huge fan of delimiters because it's kind of a mess to do. And that's because it effectively separates the entire log based on whatever specific character or symbol you'd want it to. So if it's separated by space, if you recall, there's a space between all these different things. And so you're going to make a field for every single one of these. And they're all created together, which if you have very specifically broken up logs with, say, a space or a comma or a pipe or a tab, or you can pick anything really. So let's say I do it by the number 2. It's going to break it up in kind of a weird fashion. But yeah, so you can really see here that it's kind of strange to use. I honestly have not used it a lot just because I have not found a lot of value out of it. However, I do know people that have worked with it, and there is definitely some merit to doing it in this fashion. However, I personally am more privy to regular expressions when doing field extractions. And that's because you come in here and you're able to highlight whatever you want, and it will automatically make the regular expression for you, which is really nice if you've ever had to go in and out for doing regular expressions. So let's say I want the date and the time. I'd highlight all this. It'll ask for a name with extract here. So we'll do date, time, and it will show all the events that in the same search type, and it will show you specifically what field would be populated and what that'd be. And it even highlights it over here for you. So if we look through all of our events, we'll see that all of them do have the proper date time, except for one, because it has some fluff here at the beginning. And that happens. So we need to fix that. And we need to manually change the regex. The problem with that is that once you start changing the regular expression manually, you will have to restart the field extraction process. You cannot undo this. But to do it, you will show regular expression, and it will show it here. And I already see what the problem is with it. But when we go to edit it, it says, if you manually edit, then preview the regular expression below. You cannot return to the automatic field extraction workflow. But with it is that if we take off this little character here, I believe this will work. So let's go check out that bottom event now, see if it collects it. And it does. So yeah. So now with that done, we click save, and it'll bring you to this last screen where this is effectively the name it will have when we go to that fields area up here for extracted fields in the settings, and we can set the permissions. Odds are, if you're extracting fields, you'll want to do it by app or by all apps. By app means that within, right now I'm in the search app. So within the search app, this field will be extracted for effectively everyone. I can change who would be extracted for. I can even change who can make changes to it. All apps means that it will be a global effect. So every app on your environment would have this field extraction change. And same thing, you can change who could see it and what they can do with it. It'll tell you what source type you're from, what the field is, and the regular expression to capture it. And with that, we can hit finish, and it'll tell you that you have created it. And from here, you can say explore the fields I just created in search. So we go here now, make sure we're in the right time scale. And coming down here, we can see that there is a date time field. A new one. So this is a page I have yet to refresh, and there's no date time field here, and now we have one there, and it picks out specifically this. So from here, we will be able to say search date time. Let's go with 2024, and that start. And it's still going to pull back everything, but now this is a fully searchable thing for us to do. So whoops, my bad. With that, it still shows up all this different stuff. Let's see, I'm trying to show some kind of distinction with it. So Let's do everything within 1311. And here we go. So if you want to see everything that happened past hour 1 or 111, my bad, of this specific, or at least at that specific time, you could do it like this. So this is a great example about how field extractions are used to create fields to present stuff like this. We're going to do a few more just so I can fully explain and go through the process multiple times about how it really works. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to extract that IP address out of it. And this one might not work with field extraction either. It might not automatically extract for me. The nice thing is it actually shows you it's already been extracted manually. So you can go in here, highlight this, and we'll name it source IP. Since source spelled out is already a thing within the Splunk metadata, we don't want to take that up. Now, as you can see here, there's quite a few IP addresses that aren't being captured. So we need to remedy this. One thing that you can do, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, is that there's a nice thing over here called add sample event. When you add it, you are effectively making it another sample for Splunk to pull from, to add to the regular expression to see what it should capture. So when we add that, it will pull back a failure. And that's because sometimes the field extractor tool can get a little bit confused. And it will tell you that if you're trying to extract multiple fields, you might not be able to do it like this. And sometimes when you're extracting multiple fields, and you can do multiple at the same time, it will get really confused. So instead, you might have to do custom regular expressions. With that, I'll add my regular expression I've created for it, edit it, we'll add that and we'll see how it does. And here you can see that all of them, no matter where they're at, are always captured. And that's really what you want to focus on, is to make sure that no matter where that value is at, the key is capturing it. So you want to make sure that all the values are falling under that field. And admittedly, it gets kind of fun to do this after a bit. It gets almost like a game to play regex to see if you can actually capture all the fields. So with this, you can even actually see what it would look like in a search beforehand. So with this, it pulls up a loaded job for you, and you can basically see what it would look like trying to capture all this. And it even shows it pre-populated as a field. So same thing with our date time. If we want to see every event that's gone through the source IP of 203.0.11.3.25, we can, and all of them will show up. So with that out of the way, we will then do the same thing here, finish it, and move on to the next one. And let's see, refresh, and move on to the next one. Let's do a bit more of a complicated one. What if I wanted to capture this part, the successfully authenticated, the blocked login attempt, the temporary account restriction? That's a bit more complicated, but it is possible. And this is one I actually had to work on for a bit, admittedly. But what we'll basically do is we'll highlight it, and we'll do that. And we'll call this response, since I see this kind of as like the response the computer is taking to whatever is going on. And as you can see, it does capture a few. However, not all of them. And it's kind of tough for field extractor, especially to capture something like this. So this is kind of a particularly scary one. But if we enter in this, it will basically be capturing all of it. Let's see. And with this, we can see that the response comes back every time as being some kind of event. So now we can sort by successfully authenticated, blocked login attempt, temporary account restriction. So now we've captured that. So now, as you can see, now that we have all those three fields sorted out, where before we just had web server logs. Now we've effectively turned this into a SIEM. As a security, you could be a SOC analyst, take just this info alone and have a fairly rudimentary run through of tracking accounts, because now we can see what has been successfully authenticated, what has been blocked, at what time, and from what IP address. And when you add the username and the action taken as well, this becomes a fully fledged SIEM that somebody could take and use and monitor. So yeah. And finally, I will show you, I'll show you what it's like, what they look like now and here. So if we go back to the field extractions page, you will see that they actually show up here and they're under my ownership. So even if we just sort them by me, these are all the ones that I've made. You can manually change the permissions. If you decided that you don't want to see them at all apps later and you only want to see them on the search app, you can do that. If you want to give write permissions to power users, you can do that. You can also move it and change which app it is in. And you can also delete it. So I want to delete this one and it will show up and it will be gone next time we go to search this. And I did that because I wanted to show you guys what one looks like as well.
Excuse me, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have a question from Carlos in the chat. How did you get past 111?
How did I get past 111?
Mm-hmm. Can you see it in the chat?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Carlos, what do you mean past 111 exactly? I'll keep an eye on chat, but I'll keep going and I'll answer it the moment it pops up. But I'll be happy to answer that. I'd like more context so I know exactly that way I'm sure I actually answer your question properly. So in this case, we're going to search for the index demo. And earlier I added the filter. Oh, you mean like when I added the date time of something to get past 111. I'll still come back to that. Okay. Yeah. So if we were to add date time again, we can search by, like I said, 1311. Okay. Yeah. So it would grab everything after 1311 because it will effectively only be searching for what's in here. And if you're not familiar with SPL, these quotation marks are just to contain everything inside of it, which is especially good for colons or spaces or anything that would be used as a delimiter. And these wildcards means if it's before the text, that means anything before 1311, anything after 1311 also counts. So even if there was something from 2023, it would show up as long as it took place at 111. And since it only cares about it being at 111, anything from 111 to 112 technically counts for this. If you wanted to get more specific or be more open, it is entirely possible. You also have earliest and latest to sort by time as well. So you're only searching within a specific time period. But good question, though. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can definitely divide these up. So yeah. Yeah, no, that's my bad. I must have misspoke. That's perfectly fine though. I'm if you have any other questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. And I'll also give out my email at the end. So if you want to reach out and you want me to clarify more stuff, I'd be more than happy to. But I wanted to show this last one with the rex command, which is specifically the one of the commands I mentioned in the presentation that will specifically make a regex field extraction just for the specific search. So if you don't want to keep one around for, say, to actually like go through the process of making a field extraction, but you want to ensure that you have that to at least based off of and sort off of, you can. So with that, if we go down here, we now have log level. You can see that we have warning, error, and info. So even though before I didn't have that, now I have access to a whole new way to sort out these logs. Then I can sort them by search, log level, warn. And yeah, that is effectively where I wanted to stop today. However, coming up on about 30 minutes, yeah. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'll pull up my email here. Robert Caldwell at Presidio.com. We were formerly Kinney Group, but now we go by the Presidio Splunk practice. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Like I said, email's on screen. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in how we do RCX work, how we operate within Presidio, or how we use Splunk, or how we use Atlas to make our clients' lives better. Feel free to ask. And thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Robert. I am posting in chat next month's Lunch and Learn. Next month's Lunch and Learn will be on using tokens in Splunk dashboards. So if that's a topic of interest, go ahead and register for that. And with that, and there's no more questions. Thank you, Carlos, for asking the question. We do enjoy it when there's participation. So thank you. And if there is nothing else, if you think of something later or after this, we'll be sending out a link to the webinar where you can watch it on demand. And if you think of a question watching it again or later, go ahead and send Robert a question, or the question, or send it to support@kinneygroup.com still. We haven't quite merged everything. We're still in the process, but both systems work. Anyway, thank you. And with that, I will let you all go off to have a great afternoon and a great holiday. Thank you, everyone.